The theme this month is trust. So when I say the willingness to bring all states of mind and body, this comes as part of our approach of trusting all that arises. Actually, sometimes the unpleasant states that arise and that are difficult for us are perhaps sending us a message, or they may be informing us of something that might be important for us, that might need some kind of action or perhaps a different attitude. So if we can start to see everything that arises as welcome, to be trusted, it perhaps lets us be a little bit more free of the attempts to change experience, which often come with particularly unpleasant states, and attempts to hold on, which often come with pleasant states. But more widely than this, trust is one of the attitudinal foundations of mindfulness. And I've come to kind of view this as a kind of a trusting in life and the world, which is perhaps different from our inherited culture, and also perhaps the inherited patterns of our habit mind, by which I mean the driven doing, thinking, ruminating mind. We're often implicitly invited to see the world as being a world of threat, or a world of it's all about me, competition. We might have heard about selfish genes, or maybe we look at the news and we see the 10 worst things that have happened in the world today, lined up in order of, worseness according to the editorial, kind of decisions of the news team. And there's plenty. If we look at the world in this way and from this framework of threat, then we'll find a lot of evidence for it. We'll see that there's war. We'll see that there's greed and aggression and dishonesty, and of course these are part of the picture of humanity. But they are kind of, the 10 worst things that are happening as the news presents to us. That's a phrase, by the way, that I took from David Sillitoe, who's the BBC culture correspondent, and he was asked once, he would often use this phrase when people would come to him saying they wanted to be on the news. Could they, could he get their organisation or, their, whatever it was they wanted to promote, could he get them on the news? And he said, "Are you sure you want to be on the news? The news consists of the 10 worst things that have happened today. Do you want to be one of those?" I guess what I'm suggesting here is that there is another way of viewing the world, and this is from the perspective of trust. Perhaps not an easy way to view the world, because the other way is so dominant. But if we stop and pause and tune in to this moment, any moment, we will. Well, you can find out for yourself, but I suggest that we can find a lot to trust. The amazingness of being conscious, the amazingness of all the different parts of our bodies somehow in harmony enough to produce life in us. The heart beating, the breath breathing, food being digested, blood moving around. Without even getting started on what the brain's doing, to enable, in my case at the moment, words to come out of my mouth with a fairly small gap between my thinking about what I'm going to say and those words just coming out in the form of language. And not only that, you can understand what I say by using your conscious brains and without having to think about it too hard. It all comes automatically, doesn't it? Through the magic of having learned language. And then there's the magic of being able to meet together on a Zoom connection. We're all in different parts of the country. I think we are all in the UK, so I'm not missing anybody out with that. But just in the kind of the everyday, there's magic. Huge range of coincidences that create this moment, and actually that there is connection everywhere. If you look in nature, there are so many harmonies and symbioses between species. Kind of the very act of breath of oxygen coming into the human body and breathing out carbon dioxide, which is breathed in by plants, which then produces oxygen. It's kind of like the generosity of that, and again, without us needing to make it happen. So, and then like look at the universe. Like we're all made of stardust. From the same same materials from which all the planets are made. There's so many ways that if we look about it, that there is marvelousness happening, and it doesn't require our doing anything to make it okay. So, whether you trust it or not, there's something there that has allowed all this to happen. I mean, not something as in some body necessarily, but a kind of a process which seems to be ongoing, seems to be unfolding, and which is bigger than our everyday preoccupations and concerns. That has been going on for a very, very long time, through which that process of evolution has seen so many changes happen and so many so-called crises, problems, personal ones, societal ones. And I'm not trying to minimize these at all, but just to say that if we can view these from a bigger context, that there is nevertheless a lot that seems to be trustable. And it's our patterns of thinking about experience that tends to create tension. As the famous quote that you'll see on the internet attributed to Mark Twain, which he didn't say, but it doesn't matter. My life is filled with many troubles, most of which never happened. So it's that kind of tense imagining of problems, as well as the ordinary kind of everyday ones, which are only a part of what the world is, as I've just intended to describe. This is what causes tension. This is what causes additional stress. This is what restricts us into a view of fear, of kind of retreating into a small me that is somehow has to be against others. So if we can tune into the sense of collective connection, collaboration, the huge amount of love there is in the world, then maybe we'll experience in a little bit of a different way, which doesn't mean that we have to pretend that problems aren't there, but just gives us a different framework for experiencing them. And mindfulness training can help us drop into that different view in a number of ways. Firstly, by dropping us into the present moment. In the present moment, there are no comparisons. Judgments might arise, but they're just thoughts. it kind of takes a comparison to see this moment as wrong because it's intrinsically, worse than another moment. But if we can just stay with this moment, then there's no comparison. And this moment is just what it is. And maybe we can tune into the okayness of it or the okaynesses of it. Maybe we can drop into the body and experience the wonder of this, as well as the actual feeling tones of now, which are not comparisons and are not judgments, they're just sensations. And perhaps if we stop and are still, we might discover a spaciousness that is actually awareness itself. So it exists for us in our conscious being, and which we perhaps just don't usually access. And it's the spaciousness that is able to see the different perspectives or give us access to the different perspectives rather than just being fully caught in what our thinking mind is telling us or the story or the stories that we tell ourselves about how fortunate or unfortunate or happy or unhappy or whatever else the story may be. So coming back to the body, coming back to the present moment, recognizing the spaciousness of awareness enables us potentially to access this bigger view that actually is a view of trusting. And by the way, also in trusting, it doesn't mean that we have any certainty. We don't have to trust in something. It's actually trusting as a process itself. So it doesn't require knowing what's going to happen next, which is, of course, impossible anyway. It just is an attitude of openness and curiosity that that enables us to see the fearful mind as just an aspect of what's happening, and that there's something that can know the fearful mind, know any pain that we're experiencing, know any emotional disturbances, know any distraction that we're experiencing. And the bigger view of this awareness is actually quite holding. Have you noticed also how in all the great adventure stories, the protagonist, the hero or the heroine, often will face seemingly insurmountable odds some early part of the story. And actually what makes them amazing is their capacity to continue in the face of those odds. So it's like, if we can let go of the outcome of it's only worth me doing something if I know that it's going to be successful, then actually aren't we more likely not to engage in whatever our hearts tell us would be wise action or values-based action? So trust certainly doesn't mean inaction or passivity. It actually gives us the possibility to keep going in the midst of whatever difficulties we're experiencing, knowing that whatever we're experiencing right now is impermanent. And that there may be perspectives that haven't yet arisen, that we don't have access to as yet, because we're not able to see them, that one day will come forth and become available to us. And if we can trust now, then later on that trust might come to make a lot of sense, even though in the midst of it right now we might not have a good view about what we're trusting or why. I can give a personal experience of this, which is, when I was in the midst of my very long period of anxiety, which went on for a number of years, continuously, not fairly continuously, it was continuous. Tendency to minimize it. It was continuous, and I couldn't see a way out of it in that time. But I've now experienced many, many more years without it, and with a way to work with it, or ways to work with it, than I did ever in it. And yet at that time, there was no way that I could have seen that. And to some extent, there was a trust, because that's what got me out of bed each day.